Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another live stream. It is the game review. Everton have made our week. 3 wins in 1 week. A brilliant, dominant win against Luton Town at Goodison Park on Saturday afternoon. Just as expected to seal 3 wins in 7 days for Sean Dyche's team. Oh wait, no, that's not what we're talking about, because that's not what happened. Even though we may have hoped it would happen, even though we thought it had a strong possibility of happening, a strong chance of happening, that obviously isn't what happened. Everton won, Luton Town 2 at Goodison Park on Saturday afternoon. A truly disgraceful performance from everybody involved, every single player on that pitch in an Everton shirt, the manager, the coaching staff, everybody involved at that football club should be ashamed of themselves based off of Saturday's performance. And listen, before we get into this, I just want to say obviously a massive well done to Luton. I'll probably say some things in this live stream that might upset any Luton fans that happen to be watching, and I've probably said some things in the instant match reaction and the player ratings that might upset any Luton fans that were watching, but I'll be perfectly honest, I don't really give a shit. I'm being 100% honest with you all, I don't really give a shit, because my expectation of Everton Football Club is to be able to turn up and beat a side that, let's be perfectly honest, are pound for pound in terms of player for player the worst side in the Premier League, and I'm not having a go at them for that, and I'm not jealous, and I'm not saying it from a bitter point of view. Fair play to Luton, they turned up, they had a game plan, it worked, their fans have just had an unbelievable afternoon. They're probably still out celebrating now, they're probably still out, partying now. Fair play to them, made up for them, wish them the best of luck, this season. Hopefully they don't win many more games, because I think we'll be in a fight with them come the end of the season, but absolutely fair play to them, and I've got absolutely nothing against them whatsoever. But that doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and go, right, it's all right that we lost to Luton, because, Luton are a side with good support, nice fans, and they were loud at Goodison, so that makes it all right. No. Luton, as a football team, is a team that Everton Football Club should be beating 7 days a week, 365 days a year without fail. And the fact that we haven't won this game of football is a massive, 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 massive problem and a massive worry going forward. Losing to Luton at home would be a sackable offence for the majority of Premier League clubs. Never mind, given that we have lost 7 of the last 8 home games at Goodison Park. Here's a couple of stats for you. Sean Dyche's only won 1 game in 2 years when his side has had more possession than the opposition team. 1 game in 2 years when his side has had more possession than the opposition team, which tells you that Sean Dyche's sides clearly aren't capable of setting up to control a game, to have the majority of the possession, and then to go on and win said game. So why he attempted for us to do that, I'll never know. I said it in the instant match reaction on Saturday, and I will say it again. This team cannot play football. We cannot do it. If we turn up at Anfield in a couple of weeks and try and play football and try and outplay them, we'll be beaten 10, 11, 12, maybe even 13-0 comfortably by Liverpool without them having to get out of second gear. This team cannot play football. We can play in certain ways, and if we play in certain ways, we get success. We've done it a couple of times away from home in the last couple of weeks. But one thing we absolutely cannot do is have the ball in our possession with an opposition team saying, do you know what, we're going to sit back and you do what you want with it. You come at us, you try and attack us, you try and beat us, because we cannot do it. The players aren't capable of doing it. There's not enough chemistry amongst them. There's not enough leadership in the team to be able to perform like that, and there's not enough quality in the side to be able to perform like that as well. So why the manager insisted on that happening, I will never, ever, ever know. Never, ever, ever know. John says, Cam, I don't agree. Dyche played the same team that battered Brentford except DCL. Brentford game was away from home, and we had very little possession in the Brentford game, and we were by far and wide the underdogs in that game. Nobody expected us to turn up and beat Brentford away from home. We played a certain way, it worked, and we won that game. That wasn't the case on Saturday. We were playing a Luton side who hadn't won a Premier League game before. We're struggling massively in the league. Their players, as I said, pound for pound, are championship players, and fair play to Luton because they've barely spent any money and they've come up and they've managed to turn up at Goodison and beat us. But realistically, there's no way I can accept Everton losing to Luton and sit here and say, yeah, but it wasn't the manager's fault. The manager's all right. Why? I'd honestly love to know why there is this loving with Sean Dyche where certain Evertonians just simply refuse to criticise him. Flat out refuse to criticise him when things go wrong. Oh, it's not Sean Dyche's fault. It must be the player's fault. It must be the player's fault. Well, hang on. These same people last week when we beat Brentford, they weren't saying, oh my God, how amazing were the players today. The players were absolutely unbelievable. No, they were saying, where did the Sean Dyche haters now gone back into hiding, have you? Because we've won a game, blah, blah, blah. So, hang on. Let me just get things straight. When we win a game of football, and Baz said this earlier on Toffee TV, and it's absolutely spot on. When we win a game of football, that's down to the manager, and the manager being fantastic, and the manager being brilliant. But when we lose a game of football, that's down to the players, and the players not being good enough. And I'm not saying, by the way, the players aren't good enough. Again, anybody who's watched this channel for more than 5 minutes will know that I've said on multiple occasions, this playing squad is not good enough. I've just said it 5 minutes ago. It's not good enough to play any form of football other than counter-attacking and defending. It's not good enough to play with the ball at its feet. It's not good enough to play, on the floor, possession football, this, that, and the other. It's not good enough to do that because whether we have 150 shots on goal and a 4.7 XG, we don't score the chances, which tells you the players aren't good enough. I get that and I agree completely, but I also flat out to refuse that this manager is good enough and that what we're getting from this manager is what we should expect, and we're not going to get anything better. How low are the standards of this football club now? And before we go into that, I just want to do a quick poll because I've done one of these polls on Twitter, and I want to do one now on YouTube on the stream just to see what the reaction to it was. The reaction on Twitter was out of 600 voters. I think it was something like 70% in favour of no. And the question is, regardless of what you think of Sean Dyche, regardless of your opinion, regardless of whether you want him sacked, regardless of whether you don't want him sacked, do you generally believe he will be here come the end of the season? That's the question. Will Dyche be here at the end of the season? Not whether you want him to be here, not whether you think he should be sacked right at this moment, not whether you think he should be sacked in 2 weeks. Do you, in your own heart and mind, believe Sean Dyche will be here at the end of this season when Everton play whoever we play on the final game? I can't remember, but the poll is in the live chat now. If you're watching live, get on there. Again, it's not an opinion. It's not me saying, do you want him to be here? It's me asking, do you think he will be here? I want to get into that a little bit later on in the stream. But as I said, how far have the standards dropped at our football club? How low are the standards now? And by the way, the Blues, I'm not saying this poll proves that he's a bad manager. By the way, it proves a point that I'll move on to when the poll is when people have voted on the poll. How far have we fell as a football club? And I know some people will say, well, we all know we've fallen so far as a football club, etc., etc. I had a tweet pop up yesterday on my Twitter of it. I think it was 10 years or something, or maybe even more. No, it was more, 15 years or something like that since Everton have beaten Bate Borisov away from home in, I think it was called the UEFA Cup at that time. I think we beat them 2-1 away from home. Cahill scored, and I think Fellaini scored as well. And it was like 15 years to the day since that happened. And I was looking at that tweet, and I was looking at the picture, and I was looking at a couple of the things that were written in the tweet about the game. And I remember thinking, what I would give to go back to the days of just playing European sides away from home. Never, ever, ever having to worry about relegation. The word relegation didn't come up in my, my vocabulary when talking about Everton for the first 21 years of my life. It was never, ever, ever mentioned. Even more, 22 years of my life, it was never mentioned. Relegation was something that you looked at every now and then in the news or the paper to go, oh, who's near the bottom, who's likely to go down. You never feared it or was worried about it or was anxious about it or thought it could happen to Everton. It was the thought would be laughed off. You know, I remember we'd lose a couple of games on the bounce at the start of the season when we'd have a bit of a bad start under Moyes, and your mates, you know, a couple of Liverpool fans, oh, you could go down this year, and you'd just laugh it off, and they'd laugh it off as well and go, no, it's never happening, and you'd go, no, not a chance. And then 5-6 weeks later, you know, you'd be climbed up the table and everything would be all right, and you'd never even think about it ever again. Now, it's become the norm to think about relegation. It's become the norm to expect us to be in a dogfight come the end of the season. It's become the norm for us to, you know, almost walk out to Goodison Park after losing a game against a team that, quite frankly, are absolutely fucking dreadful, which Luton are. And again, I don't care if I offend people. I'm not a Luton fan channel. I'm not here to make Luton fans happy. Luton are fucking dreadful. They could possibly be, pound for pound, player for player, the worst team to ever play in the Premier League. And people are still walking out of Goodison Park on Saturday going, oh, well, it is what it is. Not the manager's fault, the player's fault, or not the player's fault, the manager's fault. How far have the standards dropped? I wouldn't even class the David Moyes era as a success, by the way, because we didn't win a trophy. We didn't win anything. But compared to what we are now, Jesus Christ, it's a massive success compared to where we are now, isn't it? And I remember the David Moyes time. You know, fans were frustrated that we hadn't gone on and won a trophy. Fans were frustrated if we didn't finish in a European position. You know, fans were frustrated when, you know, we'd finish 9th or 8th and we wouldn't get into that, you know, competition in that UEFA Cup, which is now the Europa League. You know, I remember beating Bate Boleslav away from home, but then when we got into the knockout stages, we'd lose to Fiorentina or we'd lose elsewhere, and we'd be fuming and we'd be gutted and we'd be absolutely on the floor about it. Now, we're losing to poor teams at Goodison in the Premier League, and we're just walking away as if to say, yeah, well, it is what it is, what you'd expect. The standards have completely eroded from this football club, and that is the fault of the owners, the last two owners, Ken Wright and Managerial. The years and years of gross mismanagement and managed decline. That is what has happened to Everton Football Club. Everton Football Club have been managed declined. That's not even a phrase, but we have been managed into decline for the last however many years. And we're now at a point where we're losing games against Luton at Goodison, and we're all arguing as to whose fault is it. 15 years ago, if Everton had lost to Luton at home, whoever was in charge would have been sacked, and that would have been it. Still to this day now, even though football has changed massively, still to this day now, I don't think there'll maybe many Premier League managers that lose 5 home games on the spin, one of them being against Luton Town, and keep the job, or 4 home games on the spin, one of them being against Luton Town and keep the job. 7 out of the last 8 home games. The only home game we've won since March was that game against Bournemouth that we needed to win. That was the only home game we've won since March. We've scored 1 goal at home this season, as I've just said before. Sean Dyche's sides, when going 1-0 down, have only scored 2 goals or something in games since he's taken over as Everton manager, which practically means when we go 1-0 down, the game is done. Dyche is trying to adopt this system of let's play football, let's be the dominant team, when he knows full well that he's only ever won 1 game in 2 years when his teams have had more possession. We were all told when he came into the football club that we'd be brilliant defensively. We mightn't be great going forward. We mightn't be great to watch. We mightn't create a lot of chances or score a lot of goals, but defensively we'd be sound. We conceded 2 goals from set pieces on Saturday. And again, I don't care if this is disrespectful to Luton. Luton were only ever going to score from set pieces. Only ever going to score from set pieces. And we allowed them. We actually allowed them 2, maybe 3 opportunities before they scored their first goal. They had one which was a free header, which was headed over the bar from Lockyer, who eventually scored, which was an absolute sitter. And they had another couple of corners that, again, we got away with. And then they score from a corner, and then they score from a free kick. Where's the solidity there? Where's the, well, we won't concede silly goals from set pieces under Sean Dyche. Well, I think you'll find, in fact, I've said this before and I'll say it again, people were very, very, very quick this summer to assume that the attack is the only problem at this football club. Once we've got the attack sorted, we'll be absolutely fine, blah, blah, blah. We need a striker, The attack is a massive issue, or was a massive issue with this football club. We strengthened it massively. We brought in Danjuma, we brought in Harrison, we brought in Beto, we brought in Chimiti, we strengthened it massively. But we almost adopted this, and by we, I mean, clearly Kevin Thelwell and those in charge of recruitment, clearly the manager, and us as fans to some degree as well, even though we've got no control over it. But we almost adopted this. Once we've got the forwards sorted, and we've got a couple of new forwards in and a new striker, we'll be absolutely fine. Seemingly forgetting that our midfield, for the most part, is not good enough. Our defence, for the most part, is not good enough. And now we're in a position where, okay, we're creating lots of opportunities, but we're not taking them. And defensively, we're conceding silly, silly goals. If you've just joined us, by the way, the poll in the chat is a simple question. It's not, do you want Sean Dyche to be sacked? It's not, how long do you give him? It's a simple question. Do you believe Sean Dyche will be here come the end of the season? Currently on 79% of people voting no. 28 votes. If you could get your votes in, that would be absolutely unbelievable. And I just think the manager set up completely wrong on Saturday. And there has to be an expectation at a football club, because if there isn't, then what's the point? My expectation going into these next two games, before Brentford, after Arsenal, I sat here doing an instant match reaction and I said, I will allow the Brentford result to be what it is. I will allow the Villa result in the Cup to be what it is. But I cannot allow Everton to lose either of the games against Luton and Bournemouth at Goodison Park, because they're just two games we should be winning. And we can talk all we like about how Dyche, we're creating chances and it's not Dyche's fault, it's the players' fault, etc., etc. Everton have played 4 home games this season. We've only played one decent team, and by the way, we didn't put a glove on them. We were convincingly beaten comfortably in that game. The other 3: Fulham, Wolves, Luton. Now, you can talk to me all you like about the fact that we had loads of XG in all of those games and we created loads of those chances. We've lost the 3 of those games. If we lose to Bournemouth, that's 4 of those games. And you know what? And I get, everybody's point. Yeah, but it's not all on the manager. It's not all on the manager. The players absolutely have to take responsibility. I agree, and I get that. But, come the end of the season, we can't turn round to the Premier League and go, well, we've finished on 10 points and gone down rock bottom there. But in 7 of those games, we had more XG. So technically, we should get the points for those games. Because the Premier League will laugh at us and go, do me a favour, mate. Stop wasting our time. I used this example on Saturday, and I'll use it again. If I go into the bank and I say, I want to buy this £700 million house, and I want to buy this £1 million sports car, and I want to buy this £100 million engagement ring for my girlfriend, and they go, okay, how much is in your bank? And I go, well, I've got £100 in my bank, but my expected balance is 25 billion. They'll go, well, do me a favour, when your expected balance comes into your bank account, then you can come and talk to us. I honestly, genuinely believe the whole XG thing is a load of bollocks when talking about this conversation. It obviously has a use in football in terms of recruitment, or in terms of being able to analyse an entire season and certain players' XGs and look at certain examples. But for this example of a manager should stay in the job because our XG is significantly better than the opposition team's XG, despite the fact we're losing games, is bollocks. The Premier League management is a very, very simple situation. If you are not winning games of football and you lose 4, 5, 6, 7 games on the spin, then you will be sacked, and rightly so. Because what are we going to do? We're going to leave him in for Bournemouth, lose 1-0 in that game, but we've had more XG, and then, lose to Liverpool a couple of weeks later, then lose another couple of games. Well, but we've had more XG. The reason I asked this question in the chat, will Dyche be here at the end of the season, is because I said this the other day and I'll say it again. I firmly believe that game against Luton on Saturday was Sean Dyche's version of Watford for Rafael Benitez, of Norwich for Marco Silva, of Bournemouth, you could argue, for Frank Lampard. Definitely Wolves for Frank Lampard at Goodison on Boxing Day. And by that, what I mean is, it's that game where I don't think there's a way back for Sean Dyche now. I genuinely don't. I think whether it happens tonight, whether it happens tomorrow night, whether it happens on Saturday after Bournemouth, or whether it happens in 4 weeks, 4 6 weeks, at 2 months' time, January the 31st, which it probably will happen because that's what has happened the last 2 seasons, I don't think Sean Dyche will be the Everton manager come the end of the season. And if that's the case, then you may as well make that decision now. Because what we've done in the last 2 seasons is we have held on to a manager who very clearly is going to get the sack. But we've kept him in a job. We've allowed him to manage very winnable games. We've lost those winnable games because the manager has been clueless. And then we've sacked him. And we've all sat here after it and said, well, why didn't we sack him before those winnable games and we might have turned up and won those games? Are we going to do the same thing with Sean Dyche? Because for everybody that, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but for everybody telling me Sean Dyche is a mastermind and he's unbelievable and he's this and he's that and he's the other and he's fantastic and he's the best, I honestly, my genuine opinion, and I don't mind saying this because it's my channel and everybody's entitled to their own opinion and it's fine if you disagree, I think he's utter garbage as a football manager. I really do. I think he's absolutely terrible and his record backs me up, and I'm not saying that I'm absolutely right, and I'm not saying that there isn't other circumstances, financial circumstances, recruitment circumstances, players not taking their chances and not being good enough. I'm not saying that that isn't the case. My opinion is that he is utter garbage and that he will not take Everton forward, and that come the end of the season we will have a new manager in play anyway. And I'm not just referring to Saturday. Do you know if Everton had bladdered Fulham 5-0, bladdered Wolves 4-0, which the XG tells you that we should have, and then lost yesterday and on Saturday because, maybe a couple of chances didn't go in or whatever, I'd sit here and go, but you know what? Maybe yesterday was just one of those days. Maybe Saturday was just one of those days. We move on from it. We've won the other comfortable games at home. We've won a good game away. Let's move on. But we haven't. And how many times are we going to sit here after games and say, one of those days today, one of those days, one of those days, one of those days. And by the way, let me just say this. The whole notion of we've got no money to sack Sean Dyche is bollocks. We're a Premier League football club. We will find money somewhere if that needs to happen. And the other thing of nobody can replace him, there's nobody better than him, is also utter bollocks. There's managers out there that are available for jobs, that are sitting on their arses, that if you give them a couple of million quid, they will step in and they will, and they ultimately will take that job. So those two, we've got no money and there's no one better. Both utter bollocks. Utter bollocks. But, yeah, as I said, I just, personally for me, I don't think he'll be in charge at the end of the season, and I don't want to be sat here on deadline day announcing a new manager again, fearing that it might be too late for us to stay in the Premier League when we could make a change early on and, ultimately go and have a good couple of months before January and then give that manager the full transfer window to improve his squad. I know, when we haven't got the money to do it, finances to do it, etc., etc., we'll find a way. We'll find a way. We spent something like 2 million quid last summer and made 45 million quid back. So there's money there somewhere. I know it's going towards the run of the football club, but by the time January comes, we'll have new owners and, likely an investment there. So that is just how I feel about the manager. People can disagree, and I'm sure people will disagree, and I'm sure people won't be happy with that. But the reality is I genuinely do believe that if we lose to Bournemouth, and answer me this in the comments. There's 80 people watching live. Please answer me this. Everton lose on Saturday to Bournemouth, and again, just an example, mightn't happen. That XG might turn into goals, and we might win 4-1. Everton lose 1-0 to Bournemouth on Saturday. Do you believe Dyche's position as manager then becomes untenable? Yes or no in the comments. Yes or no in the live chat. If we are to lose to Bournemouth, that would be 8 defeats in 9 home games for Sean Dyche, and we would have played 5 home games this season, lost all of them, and they would have been to Luton, Bournemouth, Wolves, Fulham, and Arsenal. Do you then believe his position becomes untenable? And forget finances, or we haven't got the money to sack him, or there's no one out there. Do you genuinely believe that's the point where an Everton manager should be sacked? Because for me, if you lose to Luton and Bournemouth at Goodison Park, and your other results aren't backing you up, i.e. you've not won 6 on the bounce before that, or you've not won the other easy games, or you've not won, at Arsenal, against Arsenal, then I just don't see how he stays in a job. I talk about this example often because I think it's a perfect example. This Aston Villa team, okay, we beat them. We beat them on Wednesday, and that was one of them. But this Aston Villa team wiped the floor with Brighton at the weekend, 6-1 or whatever it was. Wiped the floor with Everton a few months ago. finished in a European position last season and are now playing in European football. This time last year, this Aston Villa team were being talked about as being potentially in a relegation battle because they had Steven Gerrard as manager. He seemed pretty clueless and their players weren't performing and they were dreadful and they were being spoken about as the only game they won, ironically, was against Everton, but they were being spoken about as a team that could potentially struggle that last season. What did they do? They didn't sit on their hands like we did with Frank Lampard. They didn't give him another 2 months, even though it was quite clear he wasn't able to do the job. They sacked him. They brought in an experienced manager out of nowhere, who was in a job, by the way. Unai Emery was in a job. They brought in an experienced manager, and they finished the season brilliantly, ended up in Europe, and now they're a team that, I'm hearing people talking about Aston Villa as potentially challenging for the Champions League places this season, potentially challenging for the top four, a team that I'm seeing a lot of neutral football fans saying, they'll win the Conference League, they'll comfortably win it. So hang on, that was a team that were supposedly in danger of being in a relegation battle at the beginning of last season with the very same players. Now, I agree, the Blues, I know you're very much on the side of the players of the problem. I agree. I don't think these players are particularly great. I don't. But I think they're better than what they're showing. I really do. I think they're better than what they're showing. The Blues says it's a silly comparison. They've got money, but it's not a silly comparison. They've spent more money than us, granted, but they've not spent a ridiculous amount of money, have they? And even if you were to apply that comparison, when Gerrard was sacked and Unai Emery come in, he couldn't spend any money until January, and he still got them out of that and got them performing and got the confidence up without spending a penny. So, yeah, again, listen, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Some people will be so for Sean Dyche that they won't be able to see the wood from the trees, and some people will be so against him that they won't be able to see it. For me, just don't think he's a good enough manager. I think he's stubborn. I think his decision making is poor, and I think the most worrying thing for me is he's making decisions that don't make any sense. There was no reason to play James Garner at right midfield on Saturday. Okay, there was a reason to play James Garner at right. Again, they've got much better players than us. They've got a better team than us, but I wouldn't say they're much better than us. The example is Wednesday. We turned up with a lot of their, first team players in that team, and we wiped the floor with them. So they're clearly not much better than us. We had to play James Garner at right midfield against Brentford because we had no right midfielder to step in. He didn't have to do that on Saturday. We had Danjuma there, we had Jack Harrison there, we had options, and yet he still overcomplicated the situation by putting James Garner in the midfield. Why not play the three at the back that he played against Villa, and have Patterson on the right wing, right wing back, who, by the way, had arguably his best game in an Everton shirt against Aston Villa, and then have a midfield two of James Garner and Onana, who arguably both had their best games in an Everton shirt against Villa in a two. Why overcomplicate it and put James Garner on the right-hand side in order to accommodate having three central midfielders in there? Why put Ashley Young in the team? There's no reason for Ashley Young to be in the team. No reason for it. Mikalenko has been playing relatively well recently, and Nathan Patterson, as I said, had a fantastic game against Villa. Why put Ashley Young in there? Are we now seeing the Michael Keane thing with Ashley Young now? And by that, what I mean is, are we now seeing Sean Dyche forcing Ashley Young into this team because he's his friend and he's got a personal relationship with him, a little bit like we did with Michael Keane? Because let's be honest, I'm not saying Nathan Patterson is absolutely fantastic and the best right back in the world, and I'm not saying Vitaly Mikalenko is that either, but they are both significantly better than what Ashley Young has been this season. Ashley Young's performance on Saturday was it was upsetting, and by that what I mean is, I was watching him and I felt sorry for him. And the Blues, it wouldn't be 5 at the back, it'd be 3 at the back. But I'm not saying he should have played that, by the way. I'm just saying that worked against Villa. So why not do that as opposed to playing James Garner right midfield when he didn't need to do that? But anyway, as I was saying, I felt sorry for Ashley Young. I really, really did. He looked like a 38-year-old man who shouldn't be anywhere near a Premier League football pitch. He was absolutely outran. His decision-making was shocking. Every over-the-top ball caught him out. Every ball on the floor caught him out. He was horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. And by the way, he has been all season. This wasn't a one-off performance by Ashley Young. It wasn't like we were sitting here saying, oh yeah, Ashley Young was really, really poor today, but he's been great for the rest of the season. No, he's been terrible all season. Absolutely terrible all season. And he was terrible again. Absolutely terrible again. And yet he was kept on. He was kept on for 77 minutes. Why? Why bring Jack Harrison on at half-time and then not have a right-back that's going to overlap him and move into that space? What was the reason for keeping Ashley Young on the pitch? Because you're his mate and you want to keep him on the pitch and you want to keep him happy? Or because you genuinely believe that was what was best for the team? And if you genuinely believe that was what was best for the team, then that tells me your decision-making and your ability as a manager is not good enough to give Everton what we need at the moment. And if you kept him in the team because he's your mate and you like him, then that shows that there's a stubbornness side to you, which ultimately will get you the sack anyway. I'm not saying that the players didn't miss big opportunities. We'll talk about them in a moment. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that it's all Sean Dyche's fault. I'm not saying that at all. But what I'm saying is just because he's not the problem doesn't mean he is the solution to the problem. And making decisions like putting James Garner at right midfield because you don't want to, you can't, you're too scared to take a central midfielder out, or putting Ashley Young at right back because he comes into your office and has a cup of tea every now and then, is bollocks. That is making the wrong decision. And let's not rewrite history, by the way, because I'm seeing a lot of Evertonians at the moment rewriting history. Dyche is the saviour. He saved us. He kept us up. He worked miracles to keep us up. Bollocks. Fair play to Sean Dyche. He come in a difficult situation and he kept us up. And I admit it, I said at the end of last season, it was more difficult for Dyche to keep us up than it was for Lampard. I agree with that. And we won a couple of games that were huge games that he deserves credit for. But let's not forget that 10-game period where he played Michael Keane and we conceded 20 goals in 10 games and he flat out refused to take him out the team. Rag Connor Cody out after 2 games and, one mistake which led to a goal, but kept Michael Keane in for 10 games despite the fact he was making 3 mistakes that were leading to goals every week. Only brought Yerry Mina in because he was basically forced to by the fan base. And then once Yerry Mina was brought in, we started to win games. Shock. We got a point at Wolves. We ultimately won at Bournemouth because of Yerry Mina. Dyche didn't make that decision on his own back. In the same way as he didn't put Jared Branthwaite in the start of this season off his own back. He put him in because he was forced to, because Michael Keane had let him down that many times. I wouldn't be surprised now if Michael Keane is back in against Bournemouth because of how bad defensively we were at the weekend. But he shouldn't be anywhere near that team. Just because Tarkowski and Branthwaite weren't particularly good enough doesn't mean Michael Keane's good enough. But he loves getting him in. He loves getting them in. The Blues, as Cam, you literally said in December, we don't stand the chance of staying up without January signs. It's on you saying we need a miracle. Again, I'm not having a go. I'm not saying that Sean Dyche, doesn't deserve credit. I'm not saying that Sean Dyche didn't do a good job keeping us up. He did. He absolutely did. But he also, in doing that, made some decisions that left all of us baffled and left all of us saying, what's he doing here? And he made those decisions time and time and time again. Hence why Everton have lost 7 of their last 8 home games. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion. My opinion is this: I don't think this manager is here at the end of the season. And judging by the poll, 68 people have voted on it, 81% of people agree with me. And my view is if the manager's not going to be here come the end of the season, then you may as well make that change now and give yourself, a good 7 months to try and, keep yourself afloat, have a good run in it, and not be in a relegation battle come the end of the year. Whereas what we've done the last 2 seasons is make the decision at the end of January when we're already in a relegation battle and leave us with, hanging our hopes on the edge of a cliff as to whether or not we're going to stay up or not. And I just don't see the point in doing that again. And I don't think I can physically live that again because it's so emotionally draining that I don't see the need for it when you could make the change now. If we lose to Bournemouth, there's no way he can keep his job, in my opinion. There's no way. Even the staunchest of Dyche supporters, if we lose to Bournemouth, has to admit that it's getting to a point now where it's becoming untenable. If you are enjoying, by the way, please do leave a like. It does mean a massive, massive amount to me. And if you are new to the channel, please do subscribe. That would mean a huge amount to me as well. I want to talk, we will go into the game and talk about the goals and talk about the opportunities in a little moment. But I want to talk about the XG. The XG argument that I'm sure we've all seen over the last few days or so on social media. There's a page called the XG Philosophy. They've got 450,000 followers on social media, on Twitter, specifically. And they tweeted, as they do with every game, every Premier League game, they tweeted at the end of the game on Saturday, Everton's XG 3.13. Luton's XG 0.95. So that obviously led to the Dyche supporters, or the fans amongst the fan base that do not blame the manager for any of this, coming out and saying, well, look at that, we had a boss XG, we should have won. Similar to after the Fulham game and the Wolves game, we had a great XG, nothing to do with the manager, the players are shite. That XG stat doesn't tell you the full story, and I'll tell you why. And I found this out today on Toffee TV's team, so anybody that wants to comment, you're just copying what Toffee TV said. No, I'm reciting it because I found this out today and I didn't know this before it, and I want to tell people that might not have seen that video. They state that Everton had an XG of 3.13 and Luton's was 0.95. That actually isn't strictly correct. Well, it is correct to one degree, but the way in which this has been worked out is every single opportunity Everton had being calculated towards an overall XG. Now, the problem with that is the goal Everton scored, Dominic Calvert-Lewin's goal on Saturday, came after two missed opportunities from Amadou Onana and from Abdoulaye Doucouré. How they missed those chances, I'll never know. Certainly Onana, again, I'd have every single one of those players staying behind after training for 2.5 hours, focusing on shooting. But anyway, Onana misses his chance from a yard out. Doucouré misses his chance from a yard out. And then Calvert-Lewin scores. And for the Blues saying a goal can't count as more than 1 XG, so that's completely untrue. It did count as more than 1 XG, mate, because it's not the goal that counted, it's the chances that before it. So what the Blues are saying here, what happened is, instead of this being counted as 1 XG, as in Onana's chance, Doucouré's chance, and Calvert-Lewin's chance, all being counted as 1 XG, it wasn't. Onana's chance was counted towards the XG, then separately Doucouré's chance was counted towards the XG, and then separately Dominic Calvert-Lewin's chance was counted towards the XG. So all of those opportunities were counted, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin's chance obviously was the one that ended in a goal. But the problem with that is Onana scores, then Calvert-Lewin doesn't have the chance, and neither does Doucouré. If Doucouré scores, then Calvert-Lewin doesn't have the chance. So that should only count as 1 XG. The Blues says the algorithm has just been adjusted so that it doesn't add those chances up. Not from this page, it hasn't. Certain other algorithms have, but not from this page. It hasn't. And I'm reading the tweet out from the night of the game, so it might have been adjusted since, and there might be a new tweet, but not from this game, it hasn't. So therefore, that stat in itself is not accurate, because you cannot score a goal more than once from one opportunity. So if Onana would have scored, then Calvert-Lewin and Doucouré wouldn't have even had those chances, so they shouldn't count towards the XG. It should just count as 1 XG. So I don't get it. And the Blues, I'm not disagreeing with you, and other algorithms will calculate it in a different way, but this algorithm that I've just written from this page has calculated it in that way. I'm just telling you the fact. I'm not saying that's correct. I'm not saying that's what it should be, but it did. Tom, who's been on the channel before, T-Logic, he did a good breakdown of it. He said, passage of play leading to DCL's goal with Onana and Doucouré shots calculated to 1.74 XG and counted towards the overall 2.9 XG. So it did. It calculated to more than 1 XG, 1.74. Everton created 1.6 XG for the remainder of the game. James Garner's chance got 0.57 XG in the first half, and we only created 0.65 XG in the second half. So there you go. It is calculated to more than 1 XG for that one goal. But anyway, as I've said, for me, the XG argument is a load of bollocks, because I don't care if we have 150 XG and the opposition have 0, or we have 0 and the opposition have 150. I care about whether or not we win that game of football. And whilst I do blame the players to a certain extent, I do. I really do. I blame Garner Gay for shooting because he just shouldn't shoot at all. I blame James Garner for not hitting that shot with his right foot instead of his trying to cut in on his left. You know, I blame James Garner for missing the header from 5 yards out. I blame Beto for his opportunities. I get that. Or I do think it is a bit silly to not even acknowledge that the manager is at fault here for some of the decisions that he made. Namely, putting Ashley Young in the team. Namely, having James Garner at right midfield when he shouldn't have been. These are all decisions made by the manager that ultimately ended up in us losing that game of football. A game of football that we should be embarrassed to lose. And I said this on Friday, on Saturday after the game. I was going up to my girlfriend's family's home, mum and dad's home, for a little party for my little boy on Saturday after the game. And I felt embarrassed walking in. I felt absolutely embarrassed because they're all Reds. You know, my girlfriend's dad, mum, uncle, everybody that was there, Reds. And I felt embarrassed. I walked in with my head down as if I'd played in that game. As if I was the manager. As if I had any sort of responsibility. And maybe that's a personal problem for me. Maybe you all don't feel like that when Everton lose. But I walked in and sort of like looked up and everybody looked at me and I was sort of just like... And I felt like I had took responsibility. And that's how I feel when Everton lose games like this. And that's why I'm so emotional. And that's why it hits me so much. And that's why I'm screaming and shouting and this, that and the other. Is because it feels personal. And like I said, everybody can have their own opinion. And maybe it's a bit of a bigoted opinion from me. And maybe it's a bit of an arrogant opinion from me. And it probably is an arrogant opinion from me. But I just can't sit here and watch Everton lose to a Luton team that I've watched 6 times this season and thought, oh my God, these are a social Luton team that were dumped out of the Carabao Cup by Exeter City 4 days before they played us. I can't sit there and watch Everton lose that game and just think, yeah, whatever, it is what it is. We had more XG, so we'll move on till next week. I don't know how everybody isn't fucking furious with it and absolutely beside themselves at how we have managed to set up in that way to lose that game of football. Because I'll tell you for now, and I'll be brutally fucking honest with all of you, if it was Lampard that had lost that game of football or Rafael Benitez that had lost that game of football, there'd have been fucking uproar. Absolute uproar. But because it's Dyche and everybody loves Dyche and Dyche is the best thing to ever happen to the world, everybody seems to sort of, you know, to ignore it. The Blues says if our players could finish, you'd be saying Dyche got it spot on. No, not at all, mate. Not at all, because we'd have still conceded 2 goals. So our XG was 3. So even if we'd have scored 2 goals, which would probably average out at what we should have with the XG, we'd have still conceded 2 goals. So we'd have only drawn at home to Luton. And I'd have still been sat here furious. So, no, not right, mate. Not right. Because it's not like we've drew 0-0. If we'd have drawn 0-0, I'd be sitting here saying, do you know what? We should have won that game. It is what it is. We move on. We've got a point. We haven't. We've lost the game because we've conceded 2 silly goals. So what's the XG on that? Hey, I mean, the fact that Luton's XG is 0.6 or whatever it is, and they scored 2 goals just shows how bad defensively we are, doesn't it? Anyway, I haven't spoken much about the game in this video, which is quite refreshing for once because I don't really want to talk about the game. But yeah, for me, I was baffled at some of the decisions the manager made. I wasn't baffled at the fact that the players didn't take the chances because I don't think the players were particularly good enough. And I don't think the players are particularly good enough. But the reality of the situation is, name me one time in football, ever in professional football, where you have seen 11 players get the sack over a manager and a manager has stayed in his job over the players. The Blues says Dyche didn't tell Young to not clear the ball. No, he didn't, but he picked him when he shouldn't have picked him. He put him in the starting 11 when there was no reason to put him in the starting 11. He kept him on the pitch after 10 minutes when he was fucking atrocious and he should have been sacked off. He kept him on the pitch after the goal as well. So, we can talk about the players all we like, but who picks them? Who tells them to start and who puts a shirt on them? And you can say, oh, well, there's no other options. There is. Nathan Patterson had his best game in an Everton shirt against Villa on Wednesday. He's a 20-odd-year-old lad. He's fit. He's healthy. He's available. Not like he's old or he's injured or he's got a stamina problem. He could have walked into that team and he'd have been fine. But no, he played Ashley Young, who then ultimately was a fault for the opening goal. Like I said, we did start the game positively in terms of chances created. You know, again, I think the chances we created in the opening sort of 15, 20 minutes, you know, the argument does stand that had we have scored them, it would have been a different game, and that isn't Dyche's fault. That argument is fair, but my argument isn't just specifically this game. As I said, if Everton had beat Wolves and Fulham and, you know, maybe beat Sheffield United, which we should have, I'd be sitting here going, do you know what, one of those days. But we haven't. We can't keep losing these games and avoiding talking about the manager. We can't keep losing at home to fucking god-awful teams and keep saying, well, that's not the manager's fault. XG was unbelievable and it's the player's fault. Because what are we going to... Sound, let's fucking sack Ashley Young. Fuck him off. Rip his contract up. Let's sack Beto. Let's sack Jack Harrison. Let's sack Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Let's fucking rip all the contracts up and keep Sean Dyche. That's not how it works. We all know that's not how it works. The manager is not winning games of football. We've lost 7 of 8 in the Premier League at Goodison. 7 of the last 8 games we've lost at Goodison Park. That is fucking horrendous. Somebody said today that might even be a worse record than Mike Walker had, and there's still people that genuinely don't believe Sean Dyche is an issue. I'm not saying he's the only issue or he's the biggest issue, but he's definitely an issue. Definitely an issue. I just don't... Anyway, I digress. I don't want to get angry because it's a Monday. I'm sweating my arse off, and it's a new week. We did have opportunities. First one falls to McNeil. Ball falls to him kindly after a little bit of a deflection, and it's whiskers away from going in. Unlucky. I don't really blame McNeil for this one because it's a difficult technique to hit that on the volley and put it in the top bin. But the other chances that followed were abysmal, and I'll agree with you. The Blues, they were abysmal from the players. Garner's one is shocking. He's played in through on goal, 1-on-1, and instead of just hitting it with his right foot across goal, which he should be more than capable of doing because he's a Premier League footballer, he tries to cut in on his left foot, which was never, ever, ever going to happen. Cut in on his left foot and try and play it across goal. It obviously went wide. Garner's opportunity is horrendous. Why he's shooting at all? As I said on Saturday, I'd have somebody that reminds Garner every single week, don't shoot. But he had all of the goals to aim for, and he aimed for the one part of the goal where he was never going to score. So yeah, not sure why or for what reason he did that. We had another couple of opportunities in that first half that we should have done a little bit better with as well. James Garner rattles the bar at one point, which is, again, you sort of look and thinking, you should be doing better. You absolutely should be doing better. Onana had one where he's in the box and he tries to comfortably curl it around the goalkeeper, again, instead of just wrapping his foot around it. So we had 3 or 4 big opportunities to go ahead, and every one of them, near enough, was off target. I think Onana's was the only one that was on target. Every one of the other chances was off target. But also, in that time of us having those opportunities, Luton had 2 or 3 corners that caused us problems. They had one where Lockyer had a free header and he headed over the bar. They had another one where it was defended, but it was barely defended. It was clawed away. And I think they had another one which was a little bit heart in mouth as well. And I remember sitting there thinking, this is a real big issue, this, because we keep, for some reason as well, on Saturday, by the way, and feel free to disagree with me if you want, but was it just me who thought we were giving away ridiculously stupid corners? Every single corner we seemed to give away was an avoidable situation, and yet we were just giving away corners willy-nilly. Like, why? Why are we giving away corners willy-nilly when we've already seen that corners are the only thing that are going to cause us problems today? The biggest issue we're going to have is defending set pieces, and yet we're giving away corners. Why? We had another couple of opportunities. We had one where, I don't know whether it was Mikalenko. It might have been Mikalenko, but he put it might have actually been, was it Mikalenko? Can't remember. Anyway, somebody on that right-hand side, no, I don't think it was Mikalenko, put a really good ball across the box into a dangerous area, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin was nowhere to be seen. Absolutely nowhere to be seen. As I said, we have a couple of warnings We don't take them. We still keep going. Yeah, I'll have another corner. Ball comes in. Brilliant header, to be fair to the lad. Bounces off the bar. And Ashley Young tries to do keepy-ups on the line with the ball. Instead of just lashing it away or wrapping his foot through it or throwing his body at it, he tries to chest it down, take it down, do a little pirouette, and then run away with it. And in the time he's tried to take it down, Lockyer, who, by the way, after the missed chance, would have been looking, thinking, because it was a sitter, his first opportunity, Lockyer's first opportunity, it was an absolute sitter. He'll have been thinking, right, I want to score now. I want to take an opportunity because I've missed one here that I shouldn't have missed. And what we should have been thinking is the next corner they get, or the next set piece they get, make sure he doesn't run free, because he will be looking at his last chance thinking, I should have done better there, so I'm going to go for it extra next time. We didn't. Branthwaite completely lets him run off him, and he taps the ball into the back of the net, and we're 1-0 down. We're 1-0 down in a game where we've created 4 to 5 opportunities, to go 1-0 up in, and all of a sudden we're 1-0 down. The Luton fans go absolutely apeshit. Good support, to be fair to them. Well done to them. Again, you're thinking, right, okay, well, can we get a goal back quickly and then get back to sort of calming it down? The old sort of 0-0 again, lads, calm it down, go for them again. No. We concede another silly free kick. Yeah, well, Luton have not really had much in the game other than causing us problems from set pieces, corners. So let's give them a silly free kick. We then leave the number 9 that had hit the bar with a brilliant header, I believe, for the first goal, and had caused us a couple of issues physically. We leave him on his own at the back post. Completely on his own. Mikalenko marking 2 players. And Dwight McNeil standing there with his hands in his imaginary pockets, almost as if to say, I'm not marking anybody. Why do I have to mark anybody? Completely unmarked. What happens? The ball comes in, and the fella, the big number 9, by the way, not a centre half that was unmarked, not a left back, not a not somebody that you'd look at and go, he's probably not used to being in this position. No, the centre forward, the number 9, the player that they look upon to score goals, they look upon to get them wins. Left on his own at the back post, completely on his own. Ball comes in, Mikalenko then leaves his man to go and sack him, but it's too late. He gets on the end of it, he volleys it, and it's a nice goal, to be fair. It's a really, really nice goal, nice finish. But why? Avoidable. Why have we got players stood there not marking anybody, and you've got centre forward stood on their own in the box? Why? Now that, for me, personally, has got to be on the manager. It's got to be on the manager. Now, there's 2 arguments here. This is either on the manager or the players. Some people will say it's on the players for not marking up. Some people will say it's on the manager for ultimately tactically, because, again, these players and this manager and these coaches will work on set pieces all week. But then there's obviously an argument to be had, is that why isn't anybody going and marking that second man? Why isn't Mikalenko screaming at players to go and mark that man? And if he's not doing that because he doesn't feel comfortable, or he's not a confident lad, or he's not a vocal lad, then that's where your leaders come, isn't it? When you see Jordan Pickford doing all this, looking up the line before a free kick and making sure everyone's... Why isn't he saying, Tarkowski, you're the fucking captain. Get somebody on that fucking centre forward there. Get marked that centre forward. Don't leave him on his own. Why are we all just going, yeah, that sounds all right, with a number 9 centre forward left on his own at the back post? Yeah. He taps it in. He makes it 2-0. And at this point, I think the overall feeling around the place was really, really, really numb. Really numb. I think, as I said, statistically, we said earlier on, it's not often Everton come back from being 1-0 down to win a game, let alone being 2-0 down to win a game. And what we absolutely needed was a goal before half-time. We absolutely needed a goal before half-time. And we get one. Ball comes in. Onana has a chance. As I said, not sure how he misses it. The Corday has a chance. Not sure how he misses it. If you're enjoying, by the way, please leave a like. 120 people watching. If you could get the likes up, that'd be amazing. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe as well. And then it falls to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who taps it in. And after a 10-minute VAR check, which was completely unnecessary, by the way, because the goal was comfortably onside. I've watched it back today a couple of times, and I'm not really sure how anybody could have seen it being offside. But I think it was quite obvious. I think they were looking for a reason to disallow the goal, and I've got my suspicions that Mr. Anthony Taylor and various other people at the Premier League probably wanted Luton to win that game because it will have been a big story and it will have caused an upset. So maybe there was a bit of tomfoolery going around there. But yeah, Anthony Taylor's a disgrace anyway. I've got no respect for that fella. Don't care how bad that sounds. I've got no respect for him. I think he's an absolute disgrace of a referee, as are most of them, to be fair. But we get that goal back before half time. After 15 minutes, it's finally announced. And I remember my dad sitting there to me and saying, TJ Mids has 120 people watching and he only reads out every Blues comment. I'm not just reading out the Blues comments, I'm reading out the comments that I'm disagreeing with to provide my side of the story. It's as simple as that. Liam says Dyche needs to go. Now, in my opinion, he's simply just not good enough. I agree. David says disgraceful rules. I agree. Everton Azul says Dyche is the most negative manager when he knows he's playing at home and the fans are an asset. That factually generates a positive attitude. Well, the fans are the problem, apparently, according to Dyche's biggest supporters. Ada says Dyche's too stubborn with his tactics to start in 11, yes, but these are crosses, less long balls where we lose control and have to scramble back, which just wouldn't work. Peter says never hear managers talk about XG when they win. It's a load of bollocks, absolutely. So there you go, TJ. I've read out loads more comments. Are you happy with that? Peter says Blues. I'm not going to read the argumentative ones out because there's no point in doing that, but I was reading those comments out specifically because I disagreed with them and I was wanting to provide my side of the story and back my point further. Anyway, we get that goal just before half-time. Great. The half-time whistle goes. Not a great half. Disappointed, fuming, frustrated that we've conceded 2 goals. But we've got a goal back. And I remember my dad turning to me and saying, wouldn't surprise me if we go and comfortably win this game, you know. And I remember looking at him thinking, you should know better than that. You're 63, 64 years old. You've watched Everton for a lot longer than I have. You should know better that Everton don't just turn up and absolutely blather somebody. But anyway. He was right, me dad. He was absolutely right. And do you know why he was right? Because every other team in the Premier League in that situation, and I've got no problem saying this, and again, like I said before, I've got no problem offending Luton fans. I don't give a shit. Every other team in the Premier League would have come out in that second half, would have got at them, would have pinned them back, would have created opportunities, and would have won that game 3-2, 4-2, maybe even 5-2 comfortably. Not Everton. And this is where I blame Sean Dyche. You can argue Dyche isn't at fault for missed opportunities. You can argue Dyche isn't at fault for, various different things that happened in the first half. This is where I blame Sean Dyche. Those Luton players will have been sat in that dressing room at half-time expecting Everton to come out and absolutely, get at them, push them, try and get the crowd up for it. They've just scored before half-time. Get at them, create chances, force them back, play with a bit of aggression, play with a bit of attitude, play with a bit of pace and passion. That's what they would have been expecting. And they would have walked back into that dressing room at full-time and said to themselves, wow, what an easy game of football that was for us to win. What a comfortable win that was for us. And that is where I blame the manager. Whatever the manager has said or not said at half-time, again, is where he deserves criticism for this. You can try and back him up all you like about us missing chances and that not being his fault and us having the XG and etc. But the fact that we come out in the second half only needing 1 goal to get back into that game, and I do believe generally if we'd have got a goal in the opening 10-15 minutes of that second half, I think we'd have gone on and won it comfortably. I really do. The fact that we didn't even look capable of doing that is baffling to me, and the reasons for that are of the fault of the manager. The substitute at half-time, for the start, he brought Garner Gay out and he put Jack Harrison on. There's absolutely no point in putting Jack Harrison on unless you're going to put an attacking fullback on behind him. Somebody like Nathan Patterson who can overlap him and get in behind the player, the opposition defence. He didn't do that. Jack Harrison isn't fit enough to be able to do that all on his own. He's not sharp enough to be able to do that all on his own. I'm going to end the poll, by the way, in about 2 minutes, so get your last vote in if you haven't already. He left Ashley Young on until the 77th minute, which was absolutely shocking because he should have been taken off after the 10th minute. He brought Beto on and Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and then persisted to have Jordan Pickford kick the ball in the other direction to Beto and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. And he waited too long to bring Danjuma on as well. And the overall message seemed to be that there wasn't really a plan to get back in the game. There wasn't really an idea for us to go and win the game. And that is embarrassing when you were thinking that we were playing, you know, a team who'd not won a Premier League game before. A team that had lost the majority of their games. And we come out in the second half, only really needing one goal, and then I think they'd have really panicked. And we couldn't even do that. We barely created a decent chance in the second half. We had one where Dom hits it on the volley and it goes wide, and we had a couple for Beto that he probably should do better with. And again, people will say, well, if Beto scores one of them, then we do get that goal, and then that's not Dyche's fault. But ultimately, it is the manager's fault. Because everything's the manager's fault. Because the manager manages the team, and the team aren't winning games of football, so therefore it's the manager's fault, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? If I work in an IT company and I've got a team, and one of my team isn't performing, and that is then, you know, ultimately making the rest of the team underperform, and then my boss comes to me and says, why isn't he performing? And I go, don't even look at me, lad, it's not my fault, it's his fault, go and have a word with him. He'll go, no, you're his manager. You're the person that needs to make sure they perform or do something about it. Why is it that in every other walk of life that's the way, but football managers, it's different? The Blues, we had 6 big chances compared to Luton's 1. We did, yeah, but they scored 2 goals and we scored 1. So, but yeah, as I said, for me, the second half was a disgrace. The second half was nothing short of an absolute disgrace. And that, for me, is on the manager. The fact that we come out in that second half and we didn't even look like... We looked like we were the team that were winning 2 or 3-0. We looked like we were the team that were comfortable and just wanted to see the game out and weren't really under any pressure. We didn't look like the team that were 2-1 down and desperately needed to go and win that game. We looked like the team that were comfortable, were winning, and just wanted to see the game out. It was embarrassing. It was beyond embarrassing. And where do we go now? Well, we go to Bournemouth, and for me, if he loses against Bournemouth, he's got to be sacked. I'm not asked whose fault it is. I'm not asked who's with the XG is. I'm not asked how many chances we've created. He needs to be sacked. He won't be sacked before Bournemouth, so ultimately we'll just have to wait and see. But as I said, I fear that Luton game is one that we might look back on in April and go, that was the night we should have sacked him, and we didn't. We waited until January, and now we're in this position again. Rinse and repeat, Groundhog Day, same shit, different year. When are things going to change at this football club? Who knows? Anyway, I'm going to leave it there because I'm sure we all just want to forget about this game and not ever think about it again. If you've enjoyed it, please leave a like. Would mean a massive, massive amount to me. In terms of the poll, let's get the results up. 104 votes, so a decent, amount of people. 79%, 80% of people don't believe Dyche will be here come the end of the season. 20% of people believe he will be. So there you go. The majority of people think that he won't last the season for one reason or another. And that shows you how Evertonians are feeling at the moment. Yeah. If you've enjoyed it, please leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll be back over the next couple of days with more content, so don't forget to look out for those videos. Big thank you all for watching, and we'll see you soon.